I have to attend one before.
Okay, there we go. All right.
Well, give me a long
I
meeting.
would, it is 7:00, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the Litchfield Budget Committee, and this is December 20th. And if we could start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we are missing a couple of people tonight. Jess Martin is unable to be with us. Jack is not able to be with us. And then a last minute emergency, Brian is not able to be with us. So what you see is what you get tonight.
They just voted last week.
Yeah, I know. The next item on the agenda is public input. So we have actually have people in the audience tonight. So welcome everybody. And if anybody has any input, we'd love to hear it now.
All right.
Everybody's just here to observe. Okay. Next item, we do have a set of minutes from last week. And hopefully people got a chance to read them. So the only person who wasn't here last week was you.
I wasn't.
And you. So there were four of us who were. So are there any changes you?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been made and seconded. I didn't see any changes either. So all those in favor of approving the minutes of December 13th, 2018, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed and abstain.
Aye.
So it's 402. Oh, is that all left on 6?
Yeah. Yep. The quorum.
It is. It definitely is. We had quite a bit of correspondence, all relative to information for tonight, updated warrants, updated police contract, teacher's contract. Let's see, what else did we get? Default budget for the town. That was it. So all the things we're going to discuss tonight. Anybody have any? Actually, there were a couple of questions I think that you had going to follow up.
Yep.
Or,
So there are a few questions about the math and the reading tutors / enrichment teachers, and then what was going on at GMS with the reading. So I'd spoken to them. First, it has happened at GMS where when the tutors have been pulled infrequently. It's happened. And the administration goes through almost like a hierarchy of where they have to pull somebody through to cover a class. So it has happened. They are actively looking for more subs. So it's one of those parts of doing business. The math tutor at GMS, it was asked, do we have one? We do have one. And the question was why or why not? So we do have one. Are we seeing an impact at GMS? And the big advantage there is you have the extra adult in the room to help with the math. It's a trained educator. And as time goes on, we'll have more data with test scores and whatnot, but that's still at the kind of an infancy. And then I think, Cindy, you asked what we're hoping to accomplish with the tutors. It's to help the struggling, resistant readers, but also the high achieving students to expand their abilities. And I guess in the long term, testing and just student achievement is what we'll go by as we develop competencies and go to a competency-based education. So.
As I recall, the math one at GMS was added recently by Warren.
I apologize. I didn't even know.
I think it was
we had
within the
that.
last few years that it was added. I seem to recall there was a vote because we had.
yeah.
I thought there was just reading until I asked this week, so I apologize.
But I'm saying it went before the voters, so now it makes sense to put the next one up too.
So,
Okay.
anything else on that, or?
Good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so jumping in then, school district budget warrant articles. So we did get a copy of the warrant. I think the big item that needs explanation, the school board approved the tentative agreement with the Litchfield Education Association. So I think we probably want to start there and understand what impact that has and some of the ramifications of the contract. So
All right, I'll take the lead, and then we'll have the team help fill in.
Okay.
So, wanna
Sounds
make sure that
good.
we're set. So I know we shared everything with you electronically, so you have copies of it all.
Yeah.
But essentially, I'll start with the cost breakdown because we're looking at Article 2, and you can see that there are 3 costs that are included because it is a 3-year agreement. And the most expensive of the 3 years is the opening year, so that's at $394,429. And then it does decline roughly $20,000 in going into the second year, and then it drops all the way to $346,391 in the third year. The key things that we have coming out of this are and I'm going to start with the major thing, and that is a shift in the insurance product that would be offered to the employees. So they currently are on what's known as a green plan. That's a plan with no deductibles and a copay each time they visit a medical provider. This actually represents a major shift because it is a consumer-driven plan. It is one that has deductibles associated with it. And so I believe it's the first time we will have a collective bargaining agreement with a town association that involves a deductible insurance plan. Our goal going into that was to take the cost savings from the insurance plan and to put those back into the employees as the opening point, because we believe that as the consumer-driven plan takes hold, it will result in a shift in behaviors of the folks who are on those plans, and those behaviors will lead to some long-term savings down the road. Now, we can't sit here and guarantee anything along those lines, but when you reach a point where folks are having to think about reaching deductible levels and so forth, it does cause a shift in mindset and thinking relative to the healthcare plan. So we think that's a major shift in the way we approach this.
So there's no deductibles. There hasn't been any deductible in the plans that we have, because I know they have to pay copays and they've had to, because that was a big concern the last time, that now there were copays and whatnot. So they were getting stipends to help ease into that, now having to pay copays. So
I think there's always been copays. The last contract we increased the copays
yeah.
from $10 to $30, but there has not been a deductible. We offer currently the green and the red plan. The red plan has a $250 or $500 deductible, but we have maybe 3 employees in the district on that plan. So this going to the yellow with choice fund or the yellow without choice fund, you're looking at deductibles of $1,000 and $2,000 rather than no deductible.
But how does that, so the employer cost versus the employee cost, did we make out in that?
So the cost differential, we said that we were going to put that back into the employees. The decision that the teachers made and requested was to have that go toward offsetting the cost of the insurance. So therefore, if you look at the percentage that the district is paying, you'll see that it has gone up because that represents the additional savings in the opening round of this. And then as, we have to think long-term with this, because now that we have a deductible plan that's in place, we'll be able to kind of monitor that and see how that results in savings down the road. You'll notice when you look at the costs that we gave you, There's a health insurance savings of $1,600 going into the first year of the agreement. And we can't predict or project years 2 and 3 in terms of an insurance savings. There's just no way to know what's going to happen. So yes, there is additional payment going in from the district side in order to provide that offset, but the long-term gain will come down the road.
So, with all due respect, this makes no sense at all. We have been working for a number of years now to increase the split between employee employer. So it was pretty significant to get it down to 85-15. So to take some supposed savings and then bring that split back up, we're going in the wrong direction. And I don't think with the deductible, I don't think that's significant, especially when you look at some of the increases in the tables. I think this is extremely generous to the staff, and not that they don't deserve generosity, but I don't see that this is something that the town can afford and is sustainable. Going forward, our biggest unknown has always been health costs. That's been the thing that we get hit on year after year after year, is out of control health costs. This year was awesome. To come in with a slight decrease was awesome, but that's the first time in 26 years that's ever happened. So I'm very concerned going forward that this is setting us up, and especially as the economy starts to nosedive over the next couple of years, that we're setting ourselves up for something that the town simply is not going to be able to afford. So this insurance really concerns me. It really concerns me.
So what we're advocating is that we shift our mindset on that, so that when all the cost, I shouldn't say all, the majority of the cost was borne by the district, with the employee having a minimal amount of skin in the game. The desire to drive that toward a lower percentage of the district contribution makes sense. We now have shifted this so that the employee has more skin in the game. And in fact, they are being asked to be more mindful of both the decisions they make with their health care dollars, and also where those healthcare dollars would be spent. So when you are, and if you're on a deductible plan, and I've been on one before, you are much more mindful of, if I can have this work done at this provider or that provider, and there's a more cost efficient provider, you choose that because you're working toward your own deductible. That can result in a change in behavior and long-term savings. And so to take the percentage, Cindy, with all due respect, the percentage that was in a non-deductible plan, and to then apply that directly to a deductible plan, I'm not sure is a fair apples to apples comparison. This is a different way of looking at insurance. It still has resulted in a cost savings for the district, minimal, but a cost savings. And then with the shift in behavior down the road, it should lead to increased savings for both the employee and the employer.
So do we have, I feel at one time we had the healthcare savings accounts. Do we have that?
We have the FSAs, yeah.
So if you have one of those accounts, isn't that what's used towards your deductible?
You can use it towards your deductible.
Okay.
But so that's like, an employee can take up to $2,500 and put it into an FSA. An FSA can be used for medical expenses, dental expenses, glasses, different things like that. It's all employee funded.
Mhm.
So if I want one, I have $2,500 that comes out of my paycheck over the year that I can then use to pay my medical bills.
So, and the benefit to that is that it's pre-tax. Correct.
But it's still
But there's
employee.
no, the district
Right.
is not
That's
contributing
employee
to
money.
any
Right.
HSA. So.
Any other?
So as I look at I don't want to look at it in piece by piece, because there are areas that are concerning and there are areas that I think you did a good job. In total, what is the overall cost increase for the cost of employing the average teacher is what I would be interested in. Because I would say, hey, here's the money. You guys figure out how to spend it. So what kind of increase are we looking at? Because realistically, that's what I'm interested in as a taxpayer. It doesn't matter to me whether the teachers decide they want to put more to healthcare and less to the increase. How much more is it going to cost me next year? Y'all can figure out the details. I just want to know how much more it's going to cost me. So that would be what I would be interested in. The total package. How much is the increase in that? Because you're going to have some savings in some places. You're going to have some increases in others. But at the end of the day, I pay one property tax bill. How you divvy it up, that's up to you. You know, let them figure it out. But how much more is it going to cost?
Do we have an estimated tax rate impact for year
No,
one?
I'm
Is that
saying,
what you're
like,
looking at?
if the average teacher costs $75,000, 80, whatever, when you factor in salary, benefits, pension, healthcare, anything that it costs to employ the person, how much more with this contract will it cost next year?
Per teacher, I don't think we've
No.
broken it down.
Overall,
that detail.
you can do the whole budget, total cost, what's the percent increase? Because that's really what I would be interested in. I don't care about the nickels and dimes as we have a little bit more here, but we save here. That's how they, in my opinion, how you work out the deal. It's just, at the end of the day, I just want to know how much more it's going to cost.
This is what
So is it
the
like,
nearly 400.
right, but what is that percent
Yeah,
increase? Like is it a 3% increase, a 5% increase, a 7% increase in the overall total cost?
I want to make sure that we're calculating it the way
If it
you're-
costs,
So the $394,000, right? Are you looking for the percentage of that of the overall budget of the personnel section?
I'm
of the
saying if
budget?
it costs me $100,000 to employ a person, I consider the entire employment package. That cost next year is $105,000. That's a 5% increase. Is it $110,000? Is it a
Right.
10% increase?
So that's really going to vary drastically by employee because you have
But couldn't you do the
An
entire
average?
total and then the entire total and then figure out what the total? Yeah, because you're gonna have differences, or the average. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, in a way, I would, if I had my way, I'd say, here's your cost for last year. Here's an extra 3, 5, whatever percent we agree to. You figure out how you spend it. Whether you want more in healthcare and less raises, that's up to you. But I don't want to go through and say, I think you should have gotten a better deal in healthcare, but you did awesome on the raises. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, it's whatever they want to, however they want to break it down, however you want to negotiate it. I just want to know what the cost is.
So why don't we then, because I think when we get to some of the tables, then I think
I
the
mean, there
cost
is
will.
some of it, right? Because they show like a total, when they go through the salary increases, there's one at the bottom. It ends up being like 3.4% or
Right.
3.3%. Is that in total on the average? Does that include retirement contributions and everything? Because 3.4% when you see the increase is not unreasonable.
That the spreadsheets that you have printed that shows 3.48
Mhm.
for 1920, that's off of salaries.
Okay.
So that's what employee is on what step. And yes, that includes FICA and retirement with that.
Right, but not healthcare or
Right.
it's not the entire package.
Separate. Correct.
And again, doing that per employee, I mean, one person takes a single plan, somebody else takes a family plan. I mean, it gets
Right.
really complicated to try to figure that out on even an average basis.
Okay. So, but the salaries, so what is missing from that number then? Is it just healthcare?
Longevity, yeah. Additional monies that are in the contract that would not be included in that would be longevity and healthcare.
And longevity is a one time, or is that once you hit 15, it's then year 16, year 17, every year you get it, or is it just one?
Correct. Every year you get it.
But to be clear, not in a compounding manner, right?
Yeah.
So it's not
Right.
a
Every year
compound.
it's 1,500.
Correct.
Next week, well, whatever
Very-
the number
Very
is.
important.
Right.
There are some places where it compounds
Okay.
and we do not.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So are we still on healthcare or are we on kind of?
We're still in healthcare. We kind of jumped ahead a little bit. All right, why don't we, are there any more questions on the healthcare piece that was just explained?
Mm-mm.
All right, why don't we move on then to the next pieces?
So that's the next subject.
So the benefit you feel the district is getting is that in the future, healthcare costs will be lower.
So I'm reluctant to say healthcare costs will be lower because there's no guarantee of that, right?
Right.
The benefit is that with a consumer-driven plan, it shifts behaviors, it shifts people's mindset toward their healthcare dollars. That should lead to some decreased costs down the road. But, we could have, we're an employer group of, what do we have, 125 people. And so, a couple of catastrophic situations, and you could easily see that not materialize, right? I mean, that's the reality of the way healthcare is structured. So there's my hesitancy to say, this is what it will do.
So
I just don't know.
is the yellow plan cost the district less than the red and the green?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you give those numbers, Holly?
Yeah,
If
what
you-
are we
If
looking
we
for?
were on, yellow this year, how much would that have cost compared to green? So let's just do a yellow to
Yeah.
green comparison.
If I was on let's see, we'll do one person yellow plan.
But just the total cost, because the breakdowns will shift.
Yeah.
Total cost. The employer, hold on, it's my computer.
We have it separated out.
I know,
Yeah.
everything's all,
I want to make sure we get as close to
Yeah.
apples as we can.
I mean, if we're gonna save $500,000 a year, okay, then that kind of weighs against that too. If it's gonna cost us $100,000 more a year, and we hope in the future changes happen,
These are the total.
that's a different story.
the breakdown.
So that's your total.
So if you get one person green for next year would be $9,945. Yellow with choice fund, which is a 1,000 or 2,000 deductible, pending single or family, is $9,162. Yellow with no choice fund, which the employee is contributing $2,000 or $4,000 deductible, pending single or family, is $8,029. So the cost of the consumer-driven plans are cheaper than the red and the green plans.
And we're going with the $1,000 to $2,000.
We're offering both.
Oh.
So the choice fund piece, the 1,000, 2,000 means that the employee only has to pay, if I'm single, I'm gonna pay 1,000 because school care offers this choice fund with the other $1,000 deductible. So in total, it's a $2,000 deductible, but the employee only has to pay 1,000.
I'm sorry, where does the other 1,000 come from?
School care, the insurance company. So you're paying a little more money because you're paying a little less out of pocket up front.
So it's really coming from the employee through a premium pay.
Yeah.
Because it costs more for the plan, and in return, it has a embedded portion of the deductible. But you pay for that, but with increased premiums, it's $1,000 more. So
So, if I'm doing my math right, if I look at the green plan, 9,945, and we were paying 80% of that, and then we go to
85.
85.
82. We were paying 82 of the green plan.
Okay, so it looks as though it's a wash.
Yeah.
It's a wash. All right. So we gain nothing except the hopes that it changes behavior in the future.
probably more than hope, but a different mindset toward insurance.
And well, the only other thing we would gain is potentially we'd have a larger share of any cost increase next year.
Right.
So if it goes up,
Possible risk, but
just saying, not that I'm for or against it, I'm just saying,
I-
full
I-
disclosure.
I think that's fair, or if the mindset shift results in savings
Right.
or substantial savings.
Right.
The nature of insurance, it's all risk.
done right anyway. It's when it's prepaid cost savings that it's not, but done right insurance is risk carrying.
All right. So what other financial pieces of the contract have an impact?
So the next piece to talk about is the salary
Mhm.
component. And you have the full tentative agreement. You see there's quite a bit of language also. I mean, I'm not discussing all of the language changes because they don't have a financial impact, but I hope as you read through that, you see that when you negotiate in good faith, you're looking for language that results in an enhanced educational environment for everybody. And I think there's some nice pieces that came out of it language-wise for the children. And we both, I'm pointing back because the teachers are here. I think we all agree that we've reached a better situation with some of that language. The teachers had a strong desire to come into this to make some corrections in step placement for faculty members who have been here for a period of time. There were 2 years in particular where steps were, where people were held on the same step. So they did not make a step on the salary schedule. And their desire was to make that up. And so, again, taking the idea of these are the dollars, if you want to apply those dollars toward that, for some people, that's understandable to us. The dollars are the dollars. And so you can see that on page 6 of the agreement, there's a list of faculty members who are making up steps that were missed in the, I want to make sure I have it right, the 2012, 13, 13, 14 years, I think, were the 2 years that we did make up steps.
And the
Yes.
reasons that they didn't get the steps?
There was no contract.
Yes, the contract failed.
The contract failed in those years. And so we did not address makeup steps when there was a contract with no steps, because that was an agreed upon situation. The sense from these years was that the contract had failed. Again, the economy was concerning to people, and so not passing the agreement had people stay at that point. We have had some staff who have left district to go to other districts where they actually make those steps up by leaving. So they take all the knowledge, all the training, all the PD that we provided, they bring that to another district. They are then put on the step based on their experience, not where they are in Litchfield. They make a $10,000 raise to do that, and they're no longer our employees. So this is part of the outward migration that we felt we needed to address with this. And when the teachers indicated this desire to make up these steps, you can see the list and the people who are making those jumps. That amount represents, how much is the dollar amount on that one?
These
Yep.
spreadsheets that you have,
Yeah.
on the second page, it shows for, if it was this current year's salary schedule, with all the teachers, and shows everybody that's moving, just to move, only to move to these makeup steps is 1.72%. This includes FICA and retirement, or $152,749.
So that makes sense. I thought though, so why we didn't renumber the steps, but I thought at one, and I don't know if it's the current or the previous one, we got rid of like top steps and added some more at the bottom. And that was the way around. But we like tried to make that up in a different way.
I know the last contract, we moved around, we looked at the grid, and instead of adding just a COLA to the grid, we moved around some of the numbers.
But we didn't relabel people.
Correct.
Okay.
So you have someone that's maybe on a step 7 because they were here during those years, but they have 9 or 10 years experience.
Right.
So if they say they left for a year and came back, they're now coming back at an 11 because they have 10 years experience.
Yep.
When they're these couple of steps behind.
Yeah, that makes sense, but I'm trying to think of I thought we had done something to try to make up at least the dollar amount, but obviously not the label,
Right.
which is what we call the step. Okay, I gotta think about that.
So, fully understand that private sector and public sector are different, right? But in my experience, if you don't receive an increase in a given year, either because of the financial performance of the organization or because of performance, there isn't an expectation that you make that up. So I understand the concept of they could go somewhere else and make more money. But I guess my question is this customary when you have a contract that doesn't pass, that you then make it up? And is there a precedent that we're setting? So for example, if this year this doesn't pass, are we going to look at an even higher amount in 2, 3, 5 years from now to try and make more people up? Am I getting my point across?
You are. So first of all, I choose not to think about if it doesn't pass. Say that right out loud. Instead, part of this was that we specifically asked the Teachers Association, are we done with makeup? Does this address any of the past history of it? And we have assurances that this does take care of what has happened in the past. So I'm not going to project into the future, but as far as we're concerned, the list that you see on the page addresses any of the past folks who are behind, and we'll put that issue to rest. So this will get us where we need to be going forward.
Okay. And so is that customary? Is that a typical negotiation?
So I have to be honest, I've never seen missteps in this way, so I'm not really sure how to answer that.
I don't know why we missed steps. Like I said, I know we did something to try to bring those people back up to where they should be. We didn't label it.
Okay. So then if the total cost for, what year is it, 2019-20? If the total cost of this is $152,000, why don't we see a bigger decrease in the subsequent year contract? Like, this is a 1-year hit. This is a one-time thing, right?
Right. So let me address that. In the first year, basically the overall situation is teachers are making a step. We're not adding anything to the step. So there's 0% added to the salary schedule. They make a step. And we do the makeup. We correct this situation that we're describing at the amount that Holly described. In the second year, everybody is then on step, and we progress a step and we add 2% to the salary schedule. So that 2% is the reason that you're not seeing a major dip in the second year, because then there's more money in the salary schedule. So it's the additional 2% in years 2 and years 3. Now it does decline a little bit, and that's because of where people are on the schedule and the way that applies across. But so think of it this way: it's step plus 0 in the first year, which would be less expensive, except the makeup steps then catch it up. Second year is step plus 2, third year is step plus 2.
But to move from step to step, again, if my math is correct, it's 3.8% automatically. So you are here, you have 2 years experience, you move to your third step, you get a 3.8% raise.
That is correct. I haven't done the math, but I'm trusting your math.
So
Her math's pretty good usually.
That's why I'm trusting it.
number,
So it's really 3.8 plus 2.
right?
That's
So the second and third year, it's 5.8% increase for those who move. Because granted, if you're on year 15, you're only getting the 2%. You're not moving. But I'm struggling over 5.8%.
Yep. So we're back to, again, with the agreement, which was making up for some of the past history when the economy was week, and the sense that the raises and increases were not there. And we want to make sure that we continue to be competitive with neighboring districts and in the marketplace. Back to the point at the beginning, and this doesn't totally apply, but it's a very tight labor market. Finding teachers that are certified and trained is difficult. And so we want to make sure that we continue to be able to attract and retain our folks.
Did we do a market survey? Oh, we usually do. I assume we did.
Of
Of other districts and what
as part of the collective bargaining.
Yeah.
Yep. So we looked at our peer comparison group, and we found that, let's see if I can summarize it right, but we're roughly right in the middle, and our goal is to maintain where we are. I mean, if we shortchange it too much, we'll start to dip behind and start to lose our ability to attract people in. I mean, just this past year of hiring, we have multiple people that were brought in on alternative certification plans. Good people, they're going to work out well in the long run, but it's not, you don't put an ad out for a physical science teacher and have 15 people apply. It does
Right.
not happen.
Yeah, science and math especially are tough.
Correct. And you'll notice there's no differential in a collective bargaining agreement for certification area. You are a teacher. And so we have to make sure that we can attract and retain.
So why isn't there? I mean, if there's a critical shortage, and I know the state has lists of critical shortages, why wouldn't we differentiate some of those titles out?
So that would be obviously a matter of collective bargaining. So
Right.
we would have to bring that point up at the table, right? On some level, a teacher is a teacher. And so discerning that this is more valuable than that could be problematic, I would think. But it's
Yeah,
hope that for next go round.
yeah, you can't, it's hard to say one person's more valuable than another. But a critical shortage, I mean, that's something that's already been designated outside of who fills that position. I mean, that's just economics, supply and demand. There's a shortage of that particular training, then you can command a higher price. So I wouldn't want it to be couched in terms of who's more important.
Yep.
Just whereas there's a shortage and usually they're yeah, because when I saw the total numbers, this is one of the highest. I only went back to 2013, I think. Obviously, because I'm trying to keep it as relative as possible. And this is one of the highest contract requests since 2013 when it failed.
So
We've looked back, actually, we've gone back to 1998 to look at what the contract agreements were. And we can see that in the it was a 3-year agreement that was approved by the voters in 2006. And the dollar amounts of that agreement were $463,000, $458,000, $424,000. So there were some overall dollar amounts in a 3-year agreement. I'm doing revisionist history of 10 years ago, but you're coming off of, the post 9/11 economy that had sort of tanked a little bit. And now you're into a sort of a recovery mode, if you would. And the dollar amounts are, $70,000 greater than what is currently in this agreement. So there has been some history of agreements that have been in that ballpark.
So I would say back in 2006, we also had several hundred more students, and so we had significantly more staff too.
Yep.
We're down something like three or I've lost track, 300 or 400 students since then. So
No, I think your numbers. I thought of that, and then I also thought the dollars were different then too. So when you put it all in a blender and mix it, there's some comparability, I think.
But I mean, kind of to Cindy's point, if I'm looking at the ballot and I'm looking at this, I'm looking at $1.1 million.
Yes, you are.
And that is
Over 3 years.
On a $21 million contract. So it's
budget.
Budget.
Yeah.
budget, yeah.
So
It's gonna be a hard sell. It's going to be a hard sell. Then again, it could go either way. I mean, you hear about demographics changing and people want, and so it could.
no, it
pass.
absolutely can. I would just say that, what this room is privy to hearing right now, it all is connecting. It makes sense. I understand what you're saying, but when folks get into that little booth and 1.1 million is just significant. So is there, forgive me for not knowing this, but is there a reason that, is it 2 years, 3 years, 2 years, 3 years? Is that the way that contracts generally work?
I think this time we have a 3-year offer a 3-year agreement that we're bringing forward. Our goal is really to have a 3-year agreement because it provides stability. There's actually quite a bit of cost associated with even negotiating an agreement.
right.
So you want to do it as less often as you can and provide the stability for the teachers. I think the 2-year agreements tend to come along when people are less certain looking forward. And so they say, well, let's just do 2-year agreement. I've seen 1-year agreements when folks just can't even predict that far down. So it really does vary. I will say that another goal for us when we talk about it is trying to stagger our groups. Negotiating with multiple groups at once can be problematic. And so if we could get into a position where we weren't doing more than one at a time, that would be desirable. Doesn't mean that we'll work that way, but all those things sort of come into play with how you settle on the amount of time.
Got it.
Any other comments or questions?
Just quickly, so the other piece that you see, and it's relatively minor, but I want to raise it, is that the co-curricular stipends, there is some money that's being put into the co-curricular pool so that there are some increases there. And we also have language for a committee that's going to study the whole pool. I think it's been noted by the budget committee that not all the dollars have been utilized. And so we know there are activities taking place that the dollars could be utilized. So hopefully with a committee that will study this outside of the bargaining, we'll be able to come to an agreement.
That makes sense.
So the language, so it's the call of the principal what co-curricular programs run. So that doesn't change with this agreement?
Let me look to Holly on that to make sure.
Yeah, that's correct. So normally what we would do is after we have the budget, and the budget's passed, we would look at the total amount we have for co-curricular, kind of have a meeting with them and say, okay, you have this much at GMS, what are we looking to run? This much at LMS, this much at CHS. And then the principals kind of look at the different opportunities, the different co-curriculars, and go from there.
Okay. All right, I think that's all I have off the top of my head. So what else do we have now? What's the next? So that was Article 2. Last week we talked about Article 3 and Article 4 and Article 5. So the only article we haven't seen yet is Article 6. Right?
Yeah, and these, what you had last week really was a working draft of what went to the board last night. So this is now much more finalized, and you can see the board votes are in the article for your consideration. So are we set on 3, 4, and 5, or were there follow-up questions? Because we were not here last week because it was draft. So
Yeah, I think the only concern with Articles 3 and 4 is that these exist at the elementary school. These are going to be added to the middle school. Is there going to be a guarantee that these staff will not be pulled for emergencies in other areas, and will they be able to be left alone to do the math and the reading?
So guarantee I can't deliver. I mean, there are days where we need a sub. And so again, a function of the current economic situation, there are just not enough subs. So, step number one is to get every sub we can in the building. And when we've exhausted that list, we then have to make sure that our students are taught by somebody who's able to do that. And so there is a backup protocol on who we can use in the building. And so we work our way down that list. So to give a guarantee that we wouldn't tap into this, I can't. But we are committed, and we've met with our team about increasing the sub pool. And, let me just say, if there's anybody in Litchfield who would be interested in being a sub, Holly be happy to talk to you.
Did you hear that, folks? Everybody out there, we need your help. We need subs.
And, it's a great work environment. So if folks want to join us, we'd be more than happy to have additional hands on deck. And so, we'll just continue in that front to try to increase that. And we've got some ideas and strategies. And I actually had a good conversation with Ms. Douglas today, and feel that, there are some things we can do pretty quickly to try to minimize that.
As a parent, it was not as a budget committee person.
Yes, absolutely. She had a hat on that had a P on it. We were all set.
Okay. And then Article 5, the concern that was expressed last week is that the current year's budget, there was a $250,000 salary and benefits attrition reduction. And yet even with that $250,000 attrition reduction last year, bringing on at the last minute a new staff member, and then we still had a little over a $200,000 underspend in salaries and benefits, that this article is really not needed. And only one other time that I can recall did we also have a last minute addition. It was a fourth grade teacher. Actually, she's not here. It was Martha Thayer. And that same thing was a few days before school, and that was absorbed by just reprioritizing funds. So my personal feeling is that this is not something that I would support. I think we can do that within the existing budget. If we were going to go forward with something like this, I would want to take a much larger attrition cut out of the budget, because we didn't even take the 250 this year. We took 174,
1%.
1%. So I think you'd have to take a much larger attrition cut before I would support an article like this. And that's just my personal feeling. So everybody else can weigh in as well. Or not.
Well, I would just be interested in hearing what the thinking was, because you guys weren't here last week, but the thinking was in
developing it.
Yeah.
So I think we looked at the situation we had this year with the first grade, and that was a last minute hire. And that does mean that, it comes from somewhere, right? And so we're looking at kindergarten currently. So we were projected at 70 students going into the new kindergarten. We opened with 80. We're now up to, I believe, 86, because we've had additional move-ins throughout the year. And so, 86, really, if you do the math, it equates to the fifth kindergarten, except then we're back to, we don't have the classroom for it. You're adding it in mid-year. So, the point is that these enrollment projections seem pretty fluid, or a degree of fluidity that makes it that at least having something available if there were to be, can you imagine that if we got the right combo of move-ins in targeted grades? So you like to think they're just going to be spread out across the bandwidth, but they're not always. And, you could get that real nightmare where it's a bunch of kindergartners, a bunch of second graders, a bunch of fifth graders, and all of a sudden we have to do something, right? So this, we believe, is actually responsible to have that set aside, so that in that situation, it wouldn't be spent on anything other than an enrollment that comes out of the blue like that, right? So it is something that would be available to us, sort of like when you have a maintenance reserve fund, and all of a sudden you have a boiler that you have, it's not on the horizon, you expect it's going to last another 10 years, and it goes out on you, and you have to replace the boiler. So it's sort of a smart budgeting approach, just to make sure that you do have a backup plan.
So one of the things I'd asked was how many classes are actually on the bubble, because whether you do the default or the proposed budget, there's going to be money for fifth kindergarten. That increases the capacity there just by adding another person. We have 5 other grade school classes. Based on the numbers, there's capacity there. So how close are we on some of these classes that we actually envision that this could be a problem? But I personally think this is an anomaly that, we don't know. We didn't know with kindergarten. It's the first year. You just don't know.
Right.
First grade would have been the anomaly because that one was out of the blue.
So it was doubling on them.
Well, for kindergarten, you couldn't project because we didn't have any data. First grade's an anomaly. Now we have a kindergarten. So we shouldn't have the anomaly going into first grade. First grade. So really it's still kindergarten because you still have a couple of years before we can get strict data. But by adding a 5th kindergarten, there's built-in capacity there.
Right.
So what really, you almost have to go to a 6th teacher, which is a lot more students would have to come in. That's a lot of unexpected kids. I just don't see that we're going to have that many kids move in suddenly that you're going to need space for another 15 kids. I just, other than kindergarten, which again, 2 or 3 years we'll have decent trends. But now we have a feeder program from kindergarten into first more directly. I would expect those numbers to be fairly similar. I mean, you will have some kids probably moving from, but the main draw to private kindergarten was the full day. We now have that. So I don't anticipate that you're going to see the massive uptick that you would normally see going into first grade. I don't see that you're going to add another 20 kids based on kindergarten to first grade. And then you have the other grades. Again, some of them have 4 and 5 already with built-in capacity. I just think we're planning for a problem we don't necessarily have.
Jen, did you have a comment?
No, I think it was covered. I would say I struggle with this one a little bit myself. I think given my experience in the past 3 years and the amount that has gone back in salaries and benefits, I feel like we kind of have this covered. I always like insurance policies, but I don't know that this is really at the top of my list of things I think would be beneficial.
If it's a choice between a teacher's contract and this one may not be.
Go ahead, Brian.
I have to say something. You mentioned first grade teacher. You said there's a $200,000 surplus. That's last year. $100,000 for the first grade teachers coming out of this year's budget. So we don't know what the end result is at this time.
We actually got some data, and the attrition this year, there's still a $210,000 underspent currently this year.
Right, but we still have months to go for our budget, so we don't know what the outcome is at this point.
All right, anything else on Article 5? Article 6, so this one is new from last week. Shall the Litchfield School District vote to raise and appropriate up to $50,000 to be added to the Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund established in 2004, with this sum to come from the June 30 unreserved fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year. So it would be zero tax impact in terms of an increase.
I'd be curious, one, what the current balance is, because I'm assuming the LMS driveway may have come out of this fund. So I'm curious as to what the existing fund balance is before we get too far.
It is currently at 183.
So why do we need an extra 50,000?
Because if you think about something catastrophic that happens at a building, a roof failure, replacement of a roof, you're talking $750,000 to replace a roof on a building. So
Would a catastrophic failure of that situation be covered by insurance?
in the case of LMS, maybe not. We did have a warranty that was voided on that roof. So,
Perfectly
Yeah.
aware of that one.
so, I mean, you're thinking about if one of those things were to come up
Mhm.
and you have 183 and you need $750,000, where's the rest of that coming from? So I think if you have this as Jen has said, like kind of an insurance policy, we do have aging buildings. Things are going to come up. And we've been fortunate that we haven't had to touch this, but not to be sky is falling,
Right.
but the need could come up.
Which I understand and agree. I'm curious as to why it's not tied into the other recommendation, because this was on the recommendation that came from the consultant. Like the LMS roof was on that building and grounds committee recommendation. So I'm curious as to why we're only considering one and not addressing a larger portion of those. Like, why are we not actually attacking that list? In which case, maybe this number should be higher to start knocking out the maintenance concerns that were identified.
We are still working on developing a comprehensive capital improvement plan, which is not, it's just not there at that point where we can start. There are things that are being addressed on that list on a
No,
daily
absolutely.
basis. Dave's done a really good job at doing that, but at this point, the comprehensive plan still is not in place and we're working on it.
From a budget perspective, because I keep getting told I can't dictate to policy, I would encourage monetarily wise, we should get that going because it's only going to get more expensive. So I think I have to think about what my position is based on. I mean, I understand the roof thing, but I also think that that's a known problem, and there's a lot of other known problems that rather than putting an insurance fund for when it's actually going to happen, we should just be addressing. And we have the information to start developing this plan. I mean, we've had this report now for a year and a half, so let's make progress on it.
So let me talk a little bit about the progress. So it actually was initiated by the previous business administrator. So Corey sort of inherited the product of that. I'm obviously new. We have a need, I think, to get our capital planning committee together. And to me, the big challenge that I have as I sort of get up to speed and walk around is how much money do you throw at an aging building? I mean, there's a big question with the current state of affairs at Griffin and the amount of addressing concerns there versus is it better at some point to say, let's go for a new school, right? So that's a reality of it. So you're putting good money into a building that is still on a very wet piece of property.
Mm-hmm.
There's moisture problems coming right up through the floor in there. And you're talking a lot of money to address the moisture problems alone. So we can fix the windows and the moisture still will come through the floor. So, you know, we have got to take a very measured approach to figure out how we want to proceed with that and then take that to the voters for the final outcome.
Yeah, no,
So
I
therein
appreciate
lies
that.
the pickle, right?
And it's the same pickle we've been in for 20 years. If we'd actually addressed it when we first talked about it, we probably wouldn't have a moisture issue. So as you know, we can keep talking about we should replace the building. We might even still be talking about that when my kids graduate from Campbell. But at some point, we have to say either we're going to do it or we're not going to do it. What do we do instead?
Absolutely. And I think that's our goal with the next committee. And I mean, it's let's make a decision, figure out where we're going to head. To that end, I just want to, if the budget committee didn't see, we have invited our state reps to join the school board at the January 9th meeting. I can't speak for the board, but I would predict that the notion of building aid would be a major topic. And so if there are budget committee members who are interested in participating in that January 9th at the high school, because that's another aspect that sort of handcuffs the district in a town such as Litchfield. Not having that state contribution to help out with the obligation to educate is really makes it very
Especially as
difficult.
they continue to cut their portion. So not only do we not have the state aid, we have to pick up more of
Adequacy.
stuff that they promised they were going to provide as they downshift retirement and other costs. So they keep crippling the local community.
So do we have a target for this fund? If we're at 183, do we want to get up to 250? Do we have?
I'd say 250 would be a realistic goal.
But if we had a catastrophic failure of the roof at 750, would you be able to find the other 500? Or should we pick the most expensive thing and possibly consider?
I mean, because I don't even know if
Within
you would
request, so
say.
maybe it's half of that. Maybe
I don't know
get
if
the
you'd
full-
say that one roof would be the most expensive thing. We're facing HVAC control issues at all three buildings that could be
Which is awesome.
very substantial. It is on the report.
And it was a very
It's
big ticket
identified
item.
as $2.1 million on that report.
Yes.
So where we're going with that, I have a meeting next month with a company to come in and discuss some options. But other than that, it's still a lot of money that's going to have to probably go to a warrant to.
See, I'd rather take Article 5 and add it to Article 6 for
Yeah.
buildings. Because I think you're right. I think our aging buildings, our newest building is 18, 19 years old now. So I'd much rather put money in a building maintenance fund.
Or flip the order.
No, I think Article 6 needs to be more and Article 5 needs to go away.
Yeah.
Any other comments? All right, so that's it for the school district warrant. Let's see, I think that's all we had for,
Oh, the only other question we had, the transportation's still not squared away, right? Because we were discussing
We're still working
how
towards a
that would impact
contract.
the budget.
and this has nothing to do with the warrant, but I was watching the meeting last night. And I was surprised to hear that we did not get support for the middle school upgrades for the entryway.
We did, but we didn't get the full amount.
Yeah,
We
well,
didn't get the 80% because there was a pool of money that was left over. It's the state infrastructure
Yeah, no.
grant that was identified for safety purposes. We were looking for $320,000, 80%, which would have come from the state. They didn't fully fund that one.
How close did they get?
They funded up to 100,000. Well, they haven't fully approved it. January is the final vote in the commission.
33% instead of 80.
Yeah, they had a bunch of, it was a pool of money that was left over from the initial grant funding that they allocated to certain ones that got in on this. So we did get the full 80% for the project at Campbell if it's approved, but they did this one at 100.
I would have said the middle school entryway is more of a priority than,
I'm going to speculate that if you look at what we were trying to do at the middle school, definitely the security piece, right? So that when you come in, it's a lockdown lobby. You don't have access to the school, but it also had kind of a new approach in the center because currently when you pull up to the middle school, you really aren't sure where to go, left or right, left or right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of confusing. There is no main entrance. So we were trying to create a main entrance in the middle and then create the security feature. I feel that they said, okay, doors, security, awning, overhead was more aesthetic, inviting. And so I think what they did is they divided our list up and said, we'll fund just the security piece because that's what the infrastructure fund was supposed to do. So we'll try to get an actual answer on that, but I think it was compounded by, it's hard to say that security is focused on a walkway to the middle. That really isn't what that was intended to do. So
It's a good effort.
versus, good effort versus Campbell, it's all security, right? I mean, the doors are there. We're just going to lock them in a different way and so forth. So that truly is a security upgrade.
yeah, no, I was disappointed that they didn't fund that because I thought that made perfect sense. Would we warrant the rest of it then? If we wanted to do that full project, would that become a warrant article in the future or?
Probably not the same year you have a contract on.
No. But I mean, would you still,
There's a couple. So if there's unclaimed funds as of April 1st, they will reallocate. So there is potential we still could get some additional funding from the infrastructure.
What is the
grant.
timeline to have the project completed in order to qualify? I think
I
it's,
don't have the,
so I mean, if we get it awarded and we say, well, we need another year or two to raise the additional funding, do we lose it because we haven't used it within a specified?
I'd have to look into the dates.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Because my concern would be like, I think it's a beautiful plan and it makes total sense. And I can understand why the state would be like, it looks great, but it's a little more than what we had anticipated for this concern. But at the same time, taxpayers might say, hey, that finally makes sense in that building. We'd actually be willing to support that. But would we jeopardize the state portion by waiting too long? So that would be my only, and then all of a sudden it costs even more.
okay, that was my only off-topic question. Thank you very much.
All has to do
welcome.
with money.
Thank
It's all
you.
on topic.
All right. Next item is going back to the town warrant.
So are we voting on the?
So what we decided last week, especially because again, we're down significant numbers, is that we would save our voting for our hearing.
Oh, okay.
And
I
because
missed that,
really,
sorry.
that's the opportunity for the community to come in and say, we really think the teacher contract is important and we want you to support it the way it is. Or we think that, this is not something we want to support. And we think that warrant, we're against you. So it kind of gives us some feedback from the community before we make our final decisions. So
So it gives us a chance to update to reflect the bus contract if any numbers change there, because that's not inked yet. And
yeah, and especially where, this was a meeting that was tentative because we hope to be done by now, but we're getting all this information new.
Mhm.
We could certainly choose to make those decisions tonight, but our bylaws are that we wait a meeting before,
Got it.
after receiving information. So that is why we're not voting. All right, so the town warrant. The police contract was finalized.
And
And there's now a default budget.
correct. The default budget the action was taken on Monday, and I think we previewed the amount, but it's $6,713,245. And in the warrant document that was shared, there's active links for all the supporting details.
So a long conversation we had last meeting was about the buyback of hours, and you can sell at the end of the year or whatever. So it looks as though you significantly addressed a lot of what the concern was
Mhm.
at last meeting in this.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, if you in reference to the police contract.
yeah.
Yeah, so this is Troy's not here, but I'll go through it. I mean, there's a TA summary of the contract, the major changes that occurred. There's also the estimates for year 1, year 2, year 3. It is a 2-year contract, but it's kind of bridging because we kind of go to July. So for year 1, total cost of the contract is $37,909. For year 2, it's $24,942. And then in year 3, it's $4,764. Again, it's a 27-month contract. Again, we're bridging a couple of gap months. Most of it, we made some effective changes around definition of full-time, part-time employees, kind of clarifying all that. Most of it was, a lot of the changes around wording was clarity. In the last contract, there was some misunderstandings and stuff like that. We adjusted the outside work detail rate. This also addresses the,
it was a substantial increase.
right, so what we did is we didn't get rid of the 47 plan, but we got rid of the matching.
Okay.
So they'll get a $58 rate. They can do whatever they want with that. They can put it into 47 if they want to, but the town's not going to be matching. The challenge for us was not knowing what the exposure was in the match and trying to budget for that.
So if they took the match, what would the effective hourly rate have been to the town?
Their effective rate would have been $44.90.
So we eliminated the match and still gave them
Right. What's happening is the funds the salary they make during detail comes out of the detail activity. Doesn't come out of town tax base. They get $58 of that versus we get what's it $64?
We charge $64 even.
Yeah.
And when it's a cruiser, there's additional $15.
and before they got 40 something.
They got $44.90 with the $2,000 match capability.
We charged the same amount, just the larger amount. Cost us under $50 when you count the 57 when you count the retirement match.
Mhm.
So I can see giving the rate and then the cost of the match. I'm struggling with rate, cost of the match, 20% raise.
Where's the 20% raise?
Well, you go from 40 something
That's
to
not
58.
again. It's not a raise. They're
Well,
just getting paid. They're getting paid more out of that detail charge.
So the town gets a little smaller.
The town never had really. It goes into the detail fund. It was only could be used for detail recovery of services. It really didn't benefit the town in any perspective.
Yeah.
The officers will actually, one of the comebacks in the negotiations was that under the old agreement that we had,
Mhm.
which actually I felt put the town at a lot of financial risk
Right.
because we were guaranteeing that match, whether or not the fund generated enough money to cover that match.
But wouldn't you charge enough to include the match?
Well, then we would have had to take a look at increasing fees. We had a discussion with the union about that. They were concerned that we're undermining the agreement we had with them, because if we outpriced ourselves from other communities. But getting back to, even with the increase in the hourly rate, in order for them to leverage the same amount of match that they used to have to keep themselves whole, they're going to still have to work more hours than they've had in the past. So we looked at this as a way. It tried to keep them whole. It put them. They can earn this money. They decide what they want to do with it. The town's still covering its cost, and we definitely eliminated the possibility that we didn't generate enough funds to cover the town's $2,000 match for each employee.
I'm stunned that we would even be in the position that we wouldn't charge enough to cover our costs.
We do charge them to cover our costs, but the $2,000 match was the gray area.
That should have been part of the overhead cost associated with the rate and built into.
Right.
We should have been charging that.
Right.
And
when
now
we-
it's being
we-
eliminated.
It's been eliminated because we didn't want to carry the liability. It's been eliminated. And even at the rate we're paying the officers to do the detail work, we're still covering all of our costs plus some.
Right, but you just said we were at a risk of not generating enough funds.
There was always a
The
concern.
risk was always there.
It baffles me that we would not factor that into the hourly rate you charge.
There's only so often we can change the rate. And again, we're competing with other towns. So inside Litchfield, you're right, we're locked in, right?
Yeah.
But the only way that the fund can be solved is if some of our officers can go out of town also and compete at a competitive rate. So it's sort of a market rate. All the towns have a certain set rate, and we're pretty much right where everybody else is. If we were to try to cover it and guarantee that we had the money, that we would raise the rate to the point where we wouldn't be asked to do details outside of our own town.
And it kind of doesn't matter because it's been eliminated. So there's no sense in arguing
no.
something that's not going to
No,
be in
but we
existence anymore.
Well, no, but we could have used it to leverage like a lower share of the buyout. A buyout of 50%, I think, is ridiculous.
A buyout of 50%.
With the lack of insurance, like if we're looking at total package, like if you're giving them a huge increase in the detail rate, but we still pay $10,000 per person who chooses to not take a family plan. I mean, just looking at the whole package, I don't know that in total that it was the best deal.
I think you need to remember, not every officer benefits from the detail work. Right?
How many people take the insurance buyout? And how much does that cost the town? Because it's a substantial buyout.
It represents 50% of the town's cost for the base plan.
Yes. And I think I went to like more than 10 that took it.
We only have
No.
13 officers.
No, I wouldn't.
We asked this in the past and it was more than 2.
No.
You-
I don't know. I
Million
can
or-
get that information to you, but I don't.
I would be interested because 50% of the town's portion is, when you look at what we pay in school for the buyout, 50% of the town's obligation is
It's
substantial.
still your. If we had 100% participation in the buyout, you would cut your health insurance cost in half.
Right.
In this town,
I
in
don't,
half.
I don't disagree, but I don't know that you need to be
So-
50% to achieve that anyway. So
It's a very effective tool.
it is very effective at 50%, but it could also be very effective at 30. We don't know.
Yeah.
Negotiations already happened though. I mean,
Yeah, the negotiations are done. I mean,
Yeah.
No, it is, but it also factors in, do I think we got the best deal representing the taxpayer? That's what, you're gonna ask me to support or not support this contract.
Sure.
Do I think it's the best deal that we could have struck for the taxpayer? And when I see 50% insurance buyout, that to me is not the best deal we could have struck.
But as you said before, it's the total package and what that represents.
So what is the total percent increase overall?
So that's what I'm looking at. Can you kind of run through the salaries? So step increases, changes in COLA.
Well, I mean, you can see in a summary, the year one cost, added new costs to the town. In year one is $37,909. In year two, $24,942. In year three, we're only picking up just the tail end of this contract. We really called it a 2-year contract, but it actually picked up a few years and a few months in 2021. So it was only $4,764. What the contract is doing basically is it's allowing employees that are eligible for a step, that they will advance a step. Those steps for the first time will be based on performance. So if they don't get a favorable rating with the chief, they will not advance that step. The COLA is 2.5% year one and 2.5% year two.
So
We
what's-
typically have given our COLA and wage increases have always been on April 1st. This contract's always started on April 1st. We were able to negotiate to get the contract to start July 1st. We were able to defer 3 months of COLA. And then on the tail end of the contract, you actually have another 3 months that you collect with no COLA because we're not granting on April 1st.
So
What's the benefit to that when our town budget goes January to January?
Well, right now we're trying our non-union employees. When we change to the performance review, we change that everything goes July 1st. So we're trying to get the union to come to do the same.
it gives you a little more breathing room when the budget is approved in March, and then April, 2 weeks later, you have to start doling out
More money.
whether you've, gotten performance reviews or not. So it does make sense because it gives you now from mid-March to July 1 to do those performance reviews and get a better handle on what money you have if your budget passed.
Right, but that doesn't sound like it's like a budgetary impact, more of a paperwork, makes your life
It
easier.
aligns everything. It's
Yeah.
It's just making the non-union and union employees we all know July 1st is when COLAs and performance reviews will be granted. I'm not promoting this, but it also sets the town up in a good position that if for any reason this town wanted to change its fiscal year, that if you did that, you would be in line with the July 1st date as well.
So what is the differential between steps? Do you know the percentage between steps?
It's interesting because prior, at least it sounds like about 3, maybe 4 contracts ago, there was an agreement where they had like 22 steps. So they compressed the steps,
Yeah.
and we now have 5 steps for like a police officer. And so the percentage is not the same between all the steps and the positions. They range anywhere from 2% to no more than 3, I believe. It's a little inconsistent when they went and did that compression. But it's safe to say it's between 2 to 3%.
So you max out in year 6?
So yeah, you would max out. But you would have.
So it
Let me
says
make
year
sure I got the
22,
steps
now
right
it's
here.
6.
We got 4. We got 5 steps.
There's a couple in the front because they're probation or whatever.
So 4 years. So we have 4 years. It takes employees to get the max step. Once you've reached, if you're a patrol officer and you've maxed out in year 5, you can be advanced to a master patrol officer. And I believe that if you qualify for that step, that is an 8% increase. You're a master patrol officer until you have the ability to be promoted to corporal or sergeant, which, it could be some time before that happens. This kind of movement within the agency. So you'd be basically, the adjustments would be the cost of living.
What does our force look like now? Are they closer to step 5 or are they?
Well, our senior officers are all pretty much maxed out, but we do have some officers that recently brought on 3 or 4 new. So they're moving, they're patrolmen, they're moving through the steps. And in the mid range, we have 2 to 3, master patrol officers.
So do we have a full complement now?
No, we're still one
You're down one
That's better
one
than 2,
position's
yeah.
we have one position that's not filled, the one that was created last year. And then we have one that's out on work-related injury.
And that's been a while, hasn't it?
Yes, it'll be
topic for not
over 12 months.
I just wonder, I just don't know what the legal requirements are. At what point do you say he just can't come back because he physically can't come back, or she, or whatever, I don't know.
18.
18 months.
Oh, so, all right. But then we were talking total cost increase, the percent increase in general. Are we looking at total cost increase of 3%, 5%, 8%?
Again, I think
I'm more
the same
interested-
question you asked the school.
To me,
It's,
ultimately, it's gonna be what's the total package is what I'm interested in, because the total cost of employment. How you do it, again, it's,
Well, take the 37 and divide it by 12 officers.
Yeah.
Right?
and divide by however many.
yeah, but you got different, you
Different salary ranges.
you got different people moving with steps and there's a lot.
So that's about $3,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say $2,800 for the first year per, and I'm doing it based on 13 because we have dispatchers and that's probably gonna vary depending on the officer where they are in their life cycle. I think we mentioned this at the last meeting. This is giving us a longer term payback, especially as you start looking at some of the accrual issues we had in the past. So it's a good start for the next negotiation.
We had, the selectmen had two areas of major concern going into negotiations. And that was addressing the earned time maximum accruals and addressing the special detail guaranteed $2,000 retirement match. And we were very pleased that we were able to accomplish that. We made steps in the right direction. Is there more work to be done on earned time? Yes. We didn't really open up health insurance, and we had that discussion right up front because there's been a lot of work on both sides in previous contracts and concessions made in health insurance.
That's true.
There's been a lot.
Oh, I'm
They've
gonna say
been,
that's absolutely
and last year, if you recall, when we were looking at a 21, almost 22% increase in health insurance, the union sat down with us and they held the cards. They allowed us to change healthcare provider. And that was able to drop our percentage below single digits.
Yeah.
So going into negotiations, we told them we're not discussing healthcare at this point in time.
I think the earn time was big because, like I said, that was the big discussion last week was
Well, it's a huge
You've
number.
got-
that we said that nobody was.
You
The
know-
max is. I thought you said the max was high, but we didn't have people near it anyway.
Well,
so-
we had, it was the more the employees that, we had employees that were eligible to accrue up to the 960 hours. We have employees in that position. We have employees that, to be honest with you, there's no reason why they would leave our department and, or retire.
Right.
So they could sit here and move into upper management positions and actually reach that 960 one day. And the payout for that 10 years from now, I don't know what the number is, but it's going to be very large. You would be surprised, just watching the department over the last few years with some of the turnover, getting that April 1st, 2019, anyone hired after that date, they come in the same as the non-union employees. The maximum amount they can accrue is 320 hours.
that's
That was huge.
Yeah.
It's no cost savings that I can present to you today,
No.
but the long term is huge.
liability, yeah.
And there's no reason why the town would negotiate to increase that cap going forward. So that's a big step. Getting rid of the retirement match was a big step. I think the 2.5% COLA is spot on in the market. The contract, we were looking for a 2-year agreement for two reasons. One, we were a little uncertain about what the future is. And two, we had heard about the school negotiations. We were trying to get off having collective bargaining agreements come forward at the same time. So, I don't know, that may or may work,
Didn't work this year.
I don't know.
Well, every 2 years, it means every 6 years you'll be on at the same time, regardless.
And there's little things here too that people probably just don't catch, you just don't see. But like Article 20, leave of absence, the family medical leave agreement that we had with the unit, we had, so we were on a fixed, look, it was a calendar year.
So if it happened in December.
So if you had someone go out on unpaid leave in, October, November, December, come January 1st, everything's cleared and they get another 12 weeks.
Right.
So we were able to get it to the rolling. So we're always looking back 12 months and we would eliminate that possibility. Again,
No, you're right.
it's more of a long-term correction. Most contracts now have that language. That's the same as the non-union language. And I also think the longevity, which is, that accomplished two things. I never really liked the fact that we had, when you completed 20 years of service, we increased your base pay 3%. And, having that compound every year with steps and COLAs, that 3% is always built into your base. We've gone to something where now we're trying to encourage longevity. So we're actually reaching out to people that, hit that 10-year milestone and 15-year. We're not giving a percentage into the base. It's a fixed stipend amount. So you're not getting that basis and getting compounded with, COLAs and steps. I think that's really a nice direction to be heading into.
It's the same thing we do for the non-union.
Yeah.
It's an alignment.
No, and I recognize we're not going to get where I would think we should be in 1 year. It's going to be a forward marching progress, and like the items you outlined, I think are huge. That's definitely a great way to limit the liability there. Do I think there's room? Clearly, but obviously we're not going to get there overnight.
All right. Any other comments or questions about the police union contract? Okay. And were there any questions about the default?
So Article 6.
Yeah.
So we took your recommendation. We brought it back to the board. We settled in on a $25,000 limit. And the idea is, as we suggest, create a committee. If the voters award it, the committee will go and interview these parties and make decisions on how they're going to disperse it. That's our intent.
Would there be a specific requirement for who could apply for that money? Like only recognized charities or 503c?
Well, I think that's all we typically do anyway. It's charity. It's organizations that participate inside Litchfield. They're well
Yeah, they
defined.
provide a benefit to the community of Litchfield.
Right,
That's
but
a key category.
I'm just thinking there might be other organizations that could technically fall within that. So it's
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think we even thought that through. We took the same list we already have, which is the same entities that are always solicited us.
Right.
And they're people that have come in front and they are 501(c)s and they're.
Right.
that
because
kind
if
of
you
thing.
operates within Litchfield that benefits the town, that could be a very
Sure.
that
Broad.
could be river access. That could be there could be other committees within town that could be created that fall within that. Or if the intent is to remain.
Well, I think the
Cross.
intent is about helping people. River Access would not
Yeah.
be helping anybody.
Right. Human Services and Health
I'm
Agency.
just using that because
Yeah.
I know that they do a lot of community service within town. So by that definition,
Sure.
they could technically, depending on how it's
Yeah, if there was a nonprofit organization that was local here in town and they specifically went into disabled veterans' homes and did a certain task that was related to, we considered human services or health related, they could definitely apply and request funding, and that would be considered.
One example would be the food pantry. I think they could apply if they wanted to. They come-
they probably solicit under the church, but I'm saying,
But-
I'm just saying, is it limited to the type of people, the type of organizations that send the annual letters, or would it be opened up to, community service activities within town? I guess would be like how,
Right.
and that's something for you to figure out and define. But
Yeah.
if you have a very broad definition,
Sounds like you want to serve on that committee.
I think that would be something the committee.
for the love, no,
Yeah,
but it's
to
at
be
the
honest,
direction of the board of selectmen.
So,
though.
so the committee will be established. The board will probably set some guidelines.
Right.
I think that's good feedback. I don't think we thought that through that far. We wanted to get this warrant written to a
Right.
way that we had the option to do the committee.
I like the idea. I just wanted.
I assume you did. You suggested it.
He suggested it. I said that's a great idea.
Um,
The way that the article is written, it doesn't say anything about the committee.
No, it doesn't. And when we do the presentation, that's what we're going to put behind it, because obviously the board, we're already in a position of making decisions now.
Mhm.
The board is, obviously doesn't know if we should do what we should do. So I think having people interview these entities more than we have in the past, make a recommendation based on the value and the benefit to the community would be.
Because the only concern I would have is if the intent is to allow people to determine Red Cross versus bridges versus other thing, and then 5 years from now it becomes, and good for good or for bad, all Litchfield-based community service projects, well, then we're still getting these letters that are still organizations serving the town that may be crowded out of funding.
Sure.
So that'd be my only
I look
concern.
at community projects as a little different than health and welfare kind of.
Yeah. I
So,
think you
but-
would find that the health
I hate to use
agencies have a definition,
Right.
and so whatever that definition is would be how it would apply.
Like I said, I just want to make sure it's tightened up that we actually achieve the intended goal and it doesn't later morph into something we didn't intend.
Agreed. Understood. Like I said, I think the intent is to present it in that way
Mhm.
and then have the committee establish those guidelines before they go out.
Yeah.
Would
Again,
be
not
my
that I'm
suggestion.
opposed to community service in town, but that's not what the intended of the fund is.
Right. All right. So what that does is with these two warrant articles, both coming in now less than we originally saw, when you look at the tax cap, all of these could be supported and we would still be $6,118 below the tax cap. So just, I'm not saying we should support all of these, but we could. And again, this is something we can do at hearing unless people want to do something different. It's a committee decision. Where we
Hearings.
are missing 3 people, so that's significant.
I think it'd be, I think this one in particular, I think it's very important for people to speak up at a hearing.
Mhm.
Traditionally, I don't vote at all on this because I think it's up to it's not necessarily a town function. It's something that people can decide to fund on their own. So to know how the town itself feels, creating another committee would be very, very helpful in making that decision to whether or not to support it.
So that's more of an internal thing. I think this article, this identical article, has been presented and supported by the community for a number of years. What is different is how the selectmen are going to approach it now.
Right.
So the article doesn't change.
That's why, for me, to make my decision would be very helpful to know how the townspeople feel about creating another committee that would address that. That's all.
Yep.
So I would love to see people at the hearing so you can help guide the opinion.
That, unless people have any other thoughts on the town warrant, that brings us to the end of our agenda items. Next is member input. Again, I just want to say that our job as a budget committee is by law to bring forth a budget, both for the school district and for the town. And it's basically, I feel it's about process because, I brought forth a number of motions that have failed or been supported. And I feel that my ideas that weren't supported are not, it shouldn't cause me to not support the budget because that is the process. The process is to debate and discuss. And if you're on the losing end, is this the best budget? And is this the process that we brought forth the best budget possible to present to the voters? And then the voters have an opportunity to say yay or nay. So that is kind of what I see our responsibility as. If there's something we feel didn't get addressed, if you feel that there's a reduction that didn't get a motion, and now that we've gone through the whole thing, if there's other places that need more discussion and a vote, then we need to do that. But I don't think we can say, and I'm trying not to direct it at you, Carrie, but I know you brought this up that, well, I think there's more places we can cut. If there are, then let's have that discussion. And after we have that discussion, wherever the chips may fall, then we need to be able to support that this committee has done its job and are bringing forth the work of this committee.
So with that same logic, like I'm thinking back to the school conversation that we had, and none of us were really big fans of the $75,000. So where's the line between, because the school district is doing what we ask, put it on a warrant article, let the voters decide. We're saying as a committee, we don't think it's needed, but shouldn't we let the voters decide? Like that seems like a kind of a fine line.
So
right?
I guess it's a financial decision.
Mhm.
So is there a financial need for the smaller warrant articles? Because I'm talking basically the main budget.
main
The main
budget,
budget,
yeah.
we have to bring forth the main budget. There's just no two ways about it. By law, we have to bring forth some number as a main budget.
Mhm.
So for me, it's all about the little pieces that make up that main budget. And whatever we come to as a final main budget, that process, I think, has to be respected. Now, the individual items, we can have that discussion, and that's just like a little piece within a budget. If the majority of people think that's not a financially sound decision, then we don't support that. So the separate warrant articles, to me, are different than the main budget, because the main budget is made up of so many pieces.
Got it. Okay.
You know?
And then I guess helping those who are newer to understand it's a balance between your own personal opinion and for what you think is best for the town, right? I mean,
Yep, and I respect that your opinion. I wholeheartedly disagree. My responsibility as a budget committee member is to say whether or not I believe this budget is appropriate for the purposes for which it's been developed. If I believe that a certain line item, special ed, should have been reduced further because we continually return money in that line item, and people think that it's comfortable to have a cushion in that number, and that cushion puts it as a larger differential between the default and the proposed budget, then I believe that the default budget is actually appropriately funded to meet the needs of the district. So I'm not going to support the proposed budget because I think there's enough money in the default budget to meet the stated goal and purpose and mission of the district.
so, and then on the flip side of things, you use special ed as the example. I would say special ed budget is built upon the students that we know that exist today. So in my mind, it's irresponsible of us to make reductions because there is an agreement that that money automatically goes back to the taxpayer. So you can,
And
You can-
you're entitled to that opinion. Traditionally, we take significant cuts in that, and we have not taken that cut or reduction based on traditional spending in several years. We're not reducing it in a way we traditionally have based on traditional historical spending.
So again, though, we're
Yep.
looking as the budget as a whole and that process to get to a bottom line number, because that's what it is.
Yep.
So
And if I feel comfortable that the default budget is enough to complete the mission of the school, then I am not going to vote in favor of the proposed budget because I believe the default budget will get everything done.
So let me explain. If we all think the default budget is the right number, then we're not doing our job by law.
Yes, we are, because then it would fail. We would discuss it. We would bring it to the default number, and then it would pass.
That's true. That's true.
But by saying I can't vote against it, you're preventing
No,
that
nobody's saying you
discussion.
can't vote.
No one's saying that. No one's saying that. I'm just saying that you have to think about the process, and we've had discussions as a group. Sometimes things have passed by one vote, sometimes things have lost by one vote. But I don't want us to end up in a situation where we don't have a budget.
We've been in that situation.
Because if you feel that there are places that we haven't, not that you've lost a vote, because I mean,
that haven't been discussed.
right. If you feel there are places that haven't been discussed, then we need to have those motions and we need to discuss them. Stuff we've already rehashed, you can certainly bring it up and say, you know what, based on now we've been through the entire budget, based on additional information, I'd like to revisit this cut that failed. That's appropriate too.
Mhm.
But when we get through rehashing it, then I think we have a responsibility to believe the process and to agree on a budget to bring forward. That doesn't mean you have to support it in the ballot. That means
That means
does-
we would never see a 5-3, 5-4 vote on a ballot. It'd always be 7-0, and you never see that.
It should be, in my opinion, it shouldn't even say the vote. It should say recommended or not recommended.
So, I mean,
The fact that the vote's there causes, because, I think your point is, the committee votes
confusion.
on it, you recommend to vote, you recommend to move it forward. The vote is what the vote is, but the voters should see you recommend or not recommend, not that there was a
4-3,
4-3 or
yeah.
split, because it doesn't matter, because at that point you're representing the work this committee did to move it forward.
I mean, I
committee
can
as a
support
whole,
the, I can support the process, I can support how it went through, and still not support the final number.
I absolutely. And you can get up at deliberative session and argue for a change, and maybe the people in the auditorium will agree, or you can
In
go to
one
the
way, I
ballot
guess it
and
was
vote
short
no.
and deliberative. And when they say who voted against the budget and why, I'd say, well, nobody voted against it because everybody felt the need to be unanimous.
Well, they asked that because the vote's there. And they
Because
wanted
the
to
vote is
have-
never 7-0.
Again, I'm saying it probably shouldn't even be identified as 7-0. It should be recommended or not recommended.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not sure 100%. I think those are warrant articles.
Yes.
They're not
To
that
put
required you
the-
to put the vote
Yeah.
tally.
It was.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Because people wanted to see,
Right.
was it a 5-3, 5-4 vote or a 7-0 vote?
Actually,
I thought
Or
it was
whatever the number
recommended
is.
or
just
not recommended.
recommended or not recommended, I don't think the tally has to be there. Can we
I'll
check
double
on
check it.
that?
I thought I
I
found,
thought
I
it
thought I found,
Tally had to be there.
I thought I found
I think
tally,
the
warrant
RSA says it
article.
has to be there.
The RSA says it?
I'm pretty sure.
Can we double check just
I
out of
will.
curiosity?
But it could have, it sort of demise, it kind of messes up the committee's work, right? You work in deliberative, you make it, you bring forward the best possible outcome.
Mhm.
And then you go to the public and you're disorganized, you got it, there's dissension going on, right?
I think it's healthy. I think it's
I
healthy
don't,
to have
I'm
the
not saying, but you
debate.
can get down on the floor and have the.
That's what I mean.
It
You can
doesn't
get down on the
necessarily-
floor, or you can vote against it in the ballot box. But I feel like as a committee, our debates should be here. And then once we've debated it, let the chips fall where they may. And this is the best budget that 9 people are bringing forward.
But I don't think it's the best budget. So I'm not going to vote for it.
Okay, you don't have to vote for it, but I'm talking about process, committee process.
I'm not arguing the process. I'm arguing the outcome. They're totally different things. I think the process works fine. I don't agree with the outcome. And if you're going to ask me to vote, yes, I think this is the best budget we could bring forward, I'm going to say no. It is not the best budget we could bring forward.
Is the process one
That's not the question. Question is not, did we do our best? Did we work as a team to come up with a great budget? Because then I could say, sure, we worked as a team. The question is, do I support the number? No.
All right. Anyways, so are there any other comments from the committee?
I'm sorry, I can't let it go. So just a question. So Carrie, next year, hypothetically, you're sitting in the chair spot.
Mhm.
So you will put forth and stand in front of the town a budget that you don't recommend.
The chair the chair does not get
It's,
to
I'm-
decide what to bring forward. Whether I agree with the budget or not, I have to explain why it's the best budget
I
being
think I
brought
have a
forward
good
as
history.
chair.
But do you see where the contradiction in that is? So we sit in this room, you vote against the budget, and then you stand in front of the town and say, this is our budget.
It's no different than if I were a school board or a board of selectmen liaison who voted against the motion and then had to defend it to the budget committee. It's no different. If I am representing the board, it's whatever the board votes.
Okay.
And I think I have a very good history of separating personal opinion from fact when I present it, because I try very carefully to not, when I'm talking to somebody for or against,
32.5.
to not color
Say
my
32.5
opinion.
to include vote tallies.
Okay. So the RSA does say to include vote tallies. So that must have been the one we,
I'm just looking at it myself, just found it, so.
I mean, the question that I have is, because I mean, I wasn't here last week because I was sick, but then are there places in the budget where you feel discussions that were not had that should have been had?
Well, discussions
'Cause I
that haven't
think-
been had yet would be, we're waiting on the transportation.
Right.
So there's a potential reduction there.
Definitely.
So there are some, so I think that's the big one that I think that we're waiting for. I'm
Okay.
passing notes. So, I mean, I think it's a question mark. We said it was a maximum guaranteed of 5, could be lower. We didn't take the complete reduction because we didn't know where that fell.
Right.
So there's a question mark there.
And that's fair. That is a question we would have to, a discussion we would have to have after the hearing. And if we don't have that information, we either choose to take
Yep.
a reduction or.
I know as a committee member, I would appreciate some more public input, and especially on the school side, because I know there's a lot of feelings out there, and it is a lot of money. And I try to be as informed as I can be, but again, it's that balance of how you see it versus what's best for everybody, and what can we. That there's a lot of discussion about want versus need as well.
Any other thoughts?
No.
Public input. You all stayed to the end. All right, so the next time we get together is January 10th for the public hearing. The night before, the school board is going to have our representatives in to talk about support from the state, and so people are encouraged to go to that. And if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Everybody have a great Christmas
Thanks.
and a great New Year's, and we will be back in 2019.